In the book of Acts chapter 17, verse 22, we hear the story and the narrative about Paul being taken from the Roman and Greek agora here in to my right at the bottom, where they have the temple of Athena. They have the Stoa over here on my right. Behind me, you have the Parthenon. You have the Acropolis. It's a very important building and the mythology of the Greeks in the ancient world. But Paul was taken after he was speaking to the people down there in the Roman agora, and he was challenging the Stoics and he was challenging the philosophers, and actually speaking about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob on the altar that nobody knew, of the unknown God. Now, I want to read you this verse. It says, so Paul stood there in the middle of the Areopagus. We are right now literally standing on that rock that is called Mars Hill. And it's important because I want to read you a little bit about this place. It's called Mars Hill, and it's called the Areopagus. And it's a hill in Athens where Paul conversed with the Athenian council in Acts 17, verse 19 and 22, a prominent feature in ancient Athens. And it was here that Paul preached a sermon about the unknown God. Now, I'm not really going to expound much the history of this place. I will do that at a later date when I get home and I'm able to do more teachings on this topic. But I really want to emphasize something that Paul is trying to convey. And I decided to take this place right here to shoot the video because I want you to see what's behind me. Now, many people take this verse in the book of Acts out of context. Let me quote you the verse, then I'm going to read verse 22 in context where we're at. Cultural context is very important for the understanding of the Bible, something that I keep telling my students. Now, in verse 24, and this is what people always use to always disregard the temple of Israel in Jerusalem. They use this verse to basically speak against the temple in Jerusalem, when in fact, the context of what Paul was saying had all to do with what's going on here, specifically with the temple of Athena, with the Stoas, with all the temple, imperial cult, and the temple behind me. It says, the God who made the world and all the things in it, the one being the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made of human hands. And I hear that all the time. When I teach about the Beit HaMikdash, the temple of Jerusalem, they always quote me that verse. But yet, when I'm here, then you understand its context. The context is, if Paul is here in the Agora, down the hill, and he's speaking about the unknown God, and now he's saying to them, I'm bringing the message, and he's making a contrast between what the Greeks and what the Romans were seeing and their temples compared to the God of Israel and who he is. Now, with that being said, with the Acropolis behind me on my right shoulder, you'll see what I mean. Paul stood there in the middle of the Areopagus, right here where I'm standing. Men of Athens, I see you are very religious in every respect, for I was passing through and observing carefully your objects of worship. I can see them here. I can see the temple of Athena. I can see the Acropolis. There's 3 temples up there. And it says, even found an altar in which is inscribed to the unknown God. Therefore, what you worship without knowing is that I proclaim this to you. He's actually proclaiming the God of Israel from the only thing that it was here, that it was not permeating with idolatry, the altar of the unknown God. And he utilized the mindset of the Greek and the Roman people against them. They're looking for gods, and there's an altar to one that no one knows. And he says, I'm serving the one that you don't know. And then he says, the God who made the heavens, the God who made the world and all the things in it, this one, being the Lord of heaven and the earth, does not live in human temples. That's the one he is talking about, because he would have seen that from this spot there, and he would have seen the temple of Athena right over there. So what he is really saying is in contrast with what's surrounding him in the time period and where he is located. Not that he is speaking against the temple in Jerusalem. Context, context, context. And when you come to these places and you understand the topography, the geography, and you learn about the archaeology, now the text makes more sense and the narrative lines up with its context. Along the way, the Panathenaic Way, which is the main road in the Greek Agora, which is right behind me, the main street, there's what is called the beima, the speaker's platform. Now, one of the greatest things that I've learned on this trip is how can Paul bring the message of the gospel worldwide so fast in the world back then? Worldwide back then it was to the Mediterranean basin and everything like that. But how fast was the gospel was being proclaimed throughout the Greco-Roman world? And now I understand. because of the beima. You can go to every major city and they had a speaker's platform. Stoics, Epicureans, and philosophers will stand here. Anyone was welcome to speak and basically tell them about whatever thing they wanted to talk about. In this case, Paul will come in and he will start talking about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the gospel. Who is a greater Lord, Yeshua, the master sent by God, or the emperor? Was actually a counter-political, type of message. So here we have what is called the beima. Now, the beima to many places and many people may mean nothing, but to us believers of the Messiah of Israel, this means everything. Why? Because Paul was here. Paul would have come and he stood here in this place and talking to anyone crossing the street. Everyone will come around here by the forum, right next to a big stoa, and then he will start speaking about the gospel. Many people from different countries will come through here because of Athens' location. It comes to people coming from all over the world. And now we understand why the gospel spread so rapidly in the New Testament period. This is one thing that I learned in Philippi that is carrying on to all of the other congregations, all the other cities that Paul had congregations. Now it makes sense. And right on Mars Hill, not too far from here, he was taken from this place and he went to that hill where he then spoke about the altar of the unknown God. So now we can place and we can put together all the pieces of what happened in the book of Acts when we have Paul speaking to the audience. He basically gets picked by the people and he's taken to Mars Hill, and there he begins to tell them about the unknown God. See, if you don't come here, you don't see the topography and the geography and the archaeology, you're never going to make the connections. Now we know why the gospel spread so rapidly, and now we know how Paul has so much success, because it was part of the culture in the Greco-Roman world to have people come and stand up here freely and speak about what they believed and speak about their thoughts and their philosophies. And now Paul stood up and he began to speak about the creator of the heavens and the earth. Can you imagine? If you're standing here, in front of you, you have a temple of Athena. Then you have another one over here, an imperial cult. Then you have the Acropolis. And he is basically contrasting who the God of Israel is versus the God of the nations.